Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 125.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to sharing useful information on true custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques. I create exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores. The interview I did with Tom Sterner, author of The Practicing Mind, was one of my favorites in 2018. So when I recently found out that he gave a presentation at the 2018 Golf Coaches Association of America convention last December, and as a result of that presentation is now providing some help to college golf teams, well, I thought it would be a good opportunity to bring him back and learn some more from him, and also to have him talk some about his second book, Fully Engaged, Using the Practicing Mind in Daily Life. So, enjoy another great discussion with Tom Sterner, founder of the Practicing Mind Institute. Hello, this is Tony Wright with episode 125 of the Golf Improvement Podcast. And I'm really looking forward today to welcoming back Tom Sterner, who did episode 113 with me, talking about a lot of things related to his book, The Practicing Mind. He also wrote another book, which I quickly read before we did this before I set up doing this interview, a book, Fully Engaged, which is equally great. I don't think we're going to, it's funny, we'll talk on edges of what we talk about today about things in Fully Engaged, I think, Tom, even though maybe not specifically, but it's really great to have you back. I enjoyed getting to talk with you before, and so welcome today.
Oh, it's great to be here, Tony. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. Well, you had the opportunity, I think it was in December, to talk to the Golf Coaches Association of America convention. I think Bob Sims, our mutual friend, was able to connect you to that. Talk a little bit about that experience and some of the things that you talked about in your presentation to those folks.
Okay. Well, I was very appreciative of Bob. He's a wonderful person, but I also have to have a shout out to you because you're the one that connected me to Bob. It was just kind of a cascade of events after we talked the last time.
Yeah.
As far as the coaching convention, one of the first things that struck me because I had a booth there was the family nature of the coaches in this country. Most of these coaches are college coaches. I guess there may have been some high school coaches there, but most of these coaches know each other. They've been doing this for a while. They don't appear to me to be competitive with each other. Their goal is to help the kids on their teams to play as well as they can. So it's probably, at least that's the energy that I experienced. And so it's probably different than most other college sports from that regard. And a lot of people stopped by my booth. I was at the booth 2 nights in a row. And so I got to meet a lot of these people. And I've actually continued relationships with them since then. Now, the other thing that was in the experience was it certainly wasn't as big as the golf show in Florida.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of technology people there. And I'm fascinated, I guess, on one hand, at the amount of money that's being invested in technology to help people play better. I think that this is an interesting subject because we invest an awful lot into what I don't want this to come out wrong, but into cheating discipline. basically.
What a great
that's
word,
really what we do. I mean, we have this constant effort into like creating golf clubs that fix your mistakes, for example. You can, no matter how terrible your golf swing is, this club will help you hit it straight or farther. And the same thing with, we get obsessed with launch angle and club head speed and all these different things, even down to keeping, learning to quiet our mind with technology where, you wear this and it gives you an indication of how many thoughts are going through your head. It's a really interesting Western approach to me. And it's not that I don't enjoy this stuff too. I mean, I do. I think it's fun. It's fun, but really it comes from this overall attachment to the goal, which is really perpetuates this because we are so, and especially in a game like golf or like bowling, you have a perfect score, and bowling is 300. In golf, it's par, and so and the average person that plays golf, doesn't shoot par. So we're really attached to this thing of getting to the goal, and the problem that I see with that is that it undermines the experience of enjoying the process of becoming a better golfer. Because, I wrote in the Practicing Mind that many years ago, they used to have these keyboards in the mall because I was working on pianos. One of the technologies that came out was they were really self-playing keyboards. You would sit at the keyboard and they had their own special kind of music, and the keyboard would play an accompaniment. So in your left hand, you would push down one key. The keyboard processor would know what chord to play based on that note that you were pressing with one finger. And then in the right finger, they had these big notes on the music thing, just single notes that would tell you the melody to play. So what would come out of the speakers was the playing level of, say, someone who was an intermediate player, someone who'd been playing piano for maybe 5 or 6 years. And I used to be amused at that because I would go into people's houses to work on their acoustic pianos, and they would have one of those there. And what I found was that they had a very short shelf life. That people would buy them and they would be like, look, I'm playing the piano. And I would think to myself, no, you're not. Like the piano is, the keyboard is playing the keyboard. Yeah. And you're not really experiencing what it feels like to develop the skill level to actually be able to play. That's the symbiotic relationship with music, is that music can only give you as much enjoyment as the amount of effort that you've put into learning it. And golf, to me, is the same way. And when you really learn to play golf at the level and you can enjoy the process of learning it, that's when a good shot feels really great. Now, to understand that, I see the argument of like golf, we hear this over and over again. This is good for the game of golf. Well, no, we're not really talking about the game of golf. We're talking about the business of golf. Yeah. And the business of golf is, the television shows and the announcers and the analysts and all that we all have. Golf has been around for hundreds of years, and that none of that existed. And people played golf. And if all of that went away tomorrow, if the Pro Tour went away tomorrow, I hate to say it, but people would continue to play golf. Like when we talk about, because golf has this mystical attraction that's very deep. It's a microcosm of life. It lets us experience everything that we experience in life. We can experience fear. We can experience jubilation, uncertainty, lack of confidence, all sorts of stuff we can experience in a round. And it's in a non-threatening environment. It's a great proving ground for learning about yourself and learning how to overcome certain things. And that has nothing to do with, all of the paraphernalia and everything that's out there. So to me, I think that this is something that I notice, and this was the reason why if we could invent a golf club tomorrow, a driver, and we could hand it to anybody, somebody that had never swung a club, and they could hit a 300-yard drive straight down the fairway, it would actually destroy golf as far as I'm concerned, because it would be like the keyboard that plays itself. The reason a good golf shot feels good is because it's not easy to do. It's a difficult thing to do, and we like it because of that. Even if we don't admit it to ourselves, and if we don't actually express that on the golf course.
Yeah.
But it really is the difficulty of the game that makes the good shot feel so good. And I've even posed that. I think I may have said it on our last interview. It's like, I've been in front of high school and college kids, and I've asked them, why does it feel good when you hit a great pure shot? And you get all these crazy answers, and you say, no, it's because you've hit so many bad ones. Like, that gives you the sense of when you hit it right, it's hard to do. And when you can do that for an extended period of time. And as my piano instructor used to say, the reason we practice is so that our worst performance is acceptable. And that's one of the things that happens with us in golf. As we practice more and more and more, a bad round is 75. If you look at a pro, it's the same thing for them. They're playing a much more difficult course, but if they shoot like a 75 or 76, they feel like they have had a horrible day. Most of us would love to shoot a 75 or 76 playing at that level on a course that difficult. But that's really why we practice, and it's because golf is hard, and that's really what keeps us in it. So like I said, I love the equipment. I think it's fun. But looking at this stuff there, it was the first time I'd kind of gotten a picture of, man, there's a lot of technology and a lot of money that's getting poured into research. So that was one of the experiences that I had. As far as what I talked about, it was basically what we have learned about how our mind works and the relationship between our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. And, we only spend, by psychologist research, about 5% of our time actually in conscious thought. And what I mean by that is, for the most part, we're just replaying things from our reactions that have been installed into our subconscious mind. And if we're not aware that we're doing that, then what happens is, even when we think we're making good decisions, we're actually only running the particular situation through a filter of how we've processed that situation many, many other times. We're not actually making a conscious choice of how we're going to do this particular thing. And it's really important in golf, for example, because the way that you react to a slice, the way you react to a missed putt is a reaction that you have installed in your subconscious. So when you miss a putt, and what happens is your mind automatically goes to the subconscious and says, go get the reaction that we have installed for a missed putt. And then it plays it out for you. And, you get I can't believe I missed that. And the confidence starts to drop and all sorts of stuff. And you can't change that and install new things unless you're aware that is the system that is actually active and happening. And so we talked about, a lot of that stuff, like, how do you become aware of it and how do you reprogram it? And so it was really a great time.
Well, that's neat. You set up one of our later questions. I'm sure you realize that.
Possibly.
Maybe, but anyhow. Well, that's good. So Tom, as a result of you being there, and I think you mentioned that you're now helping some college golf teams, and I don't think it's appropriate to mention names. I just don't know where all that goes, but maybe talk a little bit about some of the things, maybe you already have, that you're doing to help these teams to I guess to help them really be more focused on their process rather than score is part of it, right?
Well, the big challenge that I don't think comes as any secret with young people is that they are not fully present by any means. They're not fully engaged in what they're doing, and they don't even know what that feels like. You and I, being older, we were raised in a time before smartphones, which I don't even know why they call them smartphones, because they're basically just computers. Yeah. You can watch videos on them. You can research a library in Europe. I mean, you have access to the world's knowledge on your phone. It happens to be able to make phone calls too. But these kids were raised in an era of technology. Because most of them are, even an older kid is, 20, 21 years old. So they grew up with this, which is many things have happened. First of all, their ability to imagine is not very developed because they've never had to. We played out in the yard with, toys, with trucks and cars and stuff like that. They played video games where the imagination was done for them visually. They are, they're used to everything being instant. I want to talk to so-and-so. They just text them, and the person texts them back instantly. So there's a couple of things that are going on there. Their minds are, their minds are atrophied in certain areas, and not very, very developed. And then other areas of their brain, like this overthinking, is very developed because our culture is pushing them to do that. You walk into a convenience store to get a sandwich, and you've got televisions going with maybe 2 or 3 televisions with different news channels on them, and the radio's playing, music stuff. I recently had my father had to have some I guess I'll call it minor heart surgery, if there is such a thing. Yeah. But what I found interesting was that in the waiting room, they had about 3 different televisions going, plus this, soundtrack over the speaker system. And it's like, we don't know what to do when nothing is stimulating us. And, we are not comfortable with stillness, and we're not comfortable with quiet. And again, if you go back to the sandwich store, convenience store, you go into there, if you turned all that off and you had 10 people waiting for their sandwich to be made, people would feel very awkward because there's no noise to distract them. There's no room tone, if you want to call it that. And so with these young people, that's the reality and the paradigm that they have been raised with. So to get them to know what it feels like to be the noticer of what their mind is doing instead of just being completely immersed in it, that's the challenging part. And also to make them understand that, look, this is a technology just like, your club technology is. You wouldn't consider yourself competitive if you went out on the course today in a competitive situation with a 1970s set of clubs and a 1970 golf ball. You just wouldn't be competitive. And this stuff here that we're talking about, this mental performance, is technology. It's been proven technology, and you have to integrate it into your game. But that takes repetition with intention. And it also, you're in a process of learning. And whenever you're in a process of learning, you're always up against the threshold of your skill level. And so it feels, that the label we put to that is, it feels difficult. Because why? Because what you can do easily, you've already mastered. This is stuff that you're learning. And so you're in a process where it isn't real easy to do it. And, I think young people are okay with that when they're doing something physical, like trying to hit a fade or a draw. But when you're asking them to do this with their mind is different, because in their mind, your mind has its own mind. There's you and there's your mind. And that's why, when I tell them, and I've done presentations at these colleges, I say, all right, let's all just close our eyes for 2 minutes and stop thinking, and just see how you do. Well, they find out they can't do it. And my point is like, okay, so who's in charge? Because it's not you. You're telling your mind, stop thinking, and it's saying, nope, not doing that. And so if, that's the difference, is when you're trying to learn to be aware of what your mind is doing and in control of it, it's not the same thing as a physical thing where you're just trying to create a swing movement that creates a certain ball flight. So that to me is the challenge of working with young people, because they're starting from a place that is pretty advanced in terms of lack of mental awareness and thought control, and with this idea that everything should happen quickly, because everything in their life does happen quickly.
So how often are you seeing them to be able, it's not going to be a light bulb, but what kind of little pieces are you providing to them to start the road of that? Because it can't be an overnight success thing doing that either, right? I assume some of it is meditation and things like that. Right. But it's also the fact that your mind is going to do that, and to accept that you're going to get all these little things that go on, right? And to be able to come back.
Well, and the thing is that, mindfulness, one of the precepts of mindfulness is non-judgment, so when you understand that, look, the problem with judgment, Tony, is that it really Analysis is good. Analysis. We have to make analysis,
Sure.
but a judgment always comes after analysis. But we have to make an analysis of a situation. We have to analyze it, decide if it's always productive. Whatever we do is productive. If you hit a slice into the trees, you were productive. That you delivered the club head to the ball exactly the way it needed to be to hit that shot. So it was productive. It just isn't what you wanted, but it's not like you weren't productive. So when we talk about being productive, we have to understand that we're always productive. It's whether what we're producing is what we want. And so with these, the kids, they have to learn, and we all have to learn this, because this stuff is applicable to every area of life. We have to learn that, we're learning a skill, and in that process, we have to repeat the situation over and over again. And so when a kid has a problem dealing with a bad shot, they get upset and they start down this road that's going to impact their self-confidence. The first thing you have to teach them is that they have to what I call a rescue mantra. You have to have, when you hit that bad shot, the first thing you do is you do meditate. You learn to be more aware of what your thoughts are doing. So then you hear the thought going, I can't believe I did that. And that's your trigger. And as soon as you hear that trigger, then you have a rescue mantra that takes you in a different direction, that you have decided away from the course. This is how I want to react when this particular situation happens. And we work on that kind of stuff. What worked for you? And then as they play, that's just one example, but to carry on with your question is, what happens is we'll go to, say, a practice where they're all out on the course, and we might split them into groups of 3, and then I'll walk with them, the 3 guys, and I will watch how they think, how they manage the course, how they make decisions. Do they always go for a par 5 and 2, for example? Like, why are they thinking that way? Regardless of where their ball ends up after their drive. And we talk about, I let them play their round because I want to see how they think. Yeah. And then afterwards, we can sit and talk and debrief. And I can say, okay, on the 15th hole, you hit this shot, you were there, you did this. I noticed on this hole, you missed a putt, you did this. You learn a lot if you know what to look for. And sometimes you're talking to them about how they fell into a routine based on the installed information in their subconscious. And then other times you're talking about something, a bad decision. I've had kids that when they're around the green, they always hit a lofted wedge, which doesn't make sense, but that's what they've done. It's what they did in junior golf. And when they look at the shot, they just always assume that they're playing, that this is the right shot for that particular situation. And of course, many times it isn't. So it's to get them to step back and be more analytical, and also to understand, look, you have what they call the thinking box, the play box, and then the after the shot routine. So you have your pre-shot routine. That's all comes in your pre-shot routine is, how am I going to hit this shot? What's the right club? What's the wind? Am I hitting uphill, downhill? All those sort of things. Then you leave the thinking box and you step into the playing box. And then at that point, you want to shift over to the subconscious, the right brain as quickly and as efficiently as you can, because the left brain is very resistant to that. And then after the shot, you need a post-shot routine so that like if you hit a bad shot, how do you want to react to that? If you hit a bad shot, do you want to throw your club? Do you? We've certainly recently had some things on the Pro Tour that have been publicized, with bad behavior. Is that how you want to process it? Because that's definitely not going to increase your performance level. So, you go through that. So like I said, it's, you spend time with the kids, and fortunately, on these golf teams, there aren't a whole lot of kids. You might have 10 kids, maybe 20, something like that, but you're in a situation where you really can get to know the player themselves. And then also they can contact me, if they played around in a tournament and something they came unhinged or something bothered them, they can talk to me.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, Tom, this is the thing that I think you set up, because before I did this with you, I went back and listened to our previous interview, and one of the things that I continually work on is it's little short pitch shots, okay, And I can stand in my basement and make swings that I know are, excellent passes at the ball if I did it on the course. But when I get to that shot on the course, something else kicks in, right? I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what if it's the way I'm going to characterize it, right? What if I do this? Maybe I can't do this. So I always have a tendency to kind of beat myself up about that, right? Here we go. But I realized, when we talked in the last interview, all of that is really just a personal learning opportunity, isn't it? If I look at it, because I'm not where I need to be. And I'm not sure I'm not where I need to be from a mechanic standpoint. I think I'm not where I need to be in terms of how I set up hitting the shot mentally. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I would say, one of the things that I would advise you to do if I was working with you is that you need to go out with the intention, to play a couple of rounds and your intention is to practice your reaction to those shots. In other words, forget the score. Yeah. If you release yourself from the score, and you have to do this in order to be a better golfer. You can't always, what's the saying? You can't learn and perform at the same time. So remember that. So what happens is you have to decide, is this a round where I'm going to learn, or is this a game where I'm going to be performing? And when you make that choice, this is a round where I'm going to learn. Then the next thing is you look at the areas where you need work on. So a perfect example of that for me is, if I haven't played for a while, what will happen is that I will tend to start swinging at the ball. And when I do that, I may not finish my backswing, and I certainly don't hold it. And so what I will do is I will say, for the next 3 holes, if I'm doing a learning round, I am going to hold every follow through. I'm going to finish every follow through. And that's my swing thought. When I take the club back, I'm thinking, finish the swing. And then I'll tell myself, I'm going to hold my follow through until the ball stops. I don't care if it goes in a parking lot. I am going to hold the swing. I don't care how bad the shot is, how good the shot is. And I'm going to hold that. I'm going to discipline my mind to hold that follow through until the ball stops. And you'd be amazed at how this changes your tempo and brings everything into alignment. That's one example. But for what you're talking about there specifically with your shots, I would say to you, let's figure this out here on the couch. If you could handle that situation when you hit a chip shot, if you could handle that any way you want, what would that be? Because it doesn't sound like you know that. It sounds to me like you hit the shot, and then the shot dictates how you're going to react afterwards. And so you hit the shot, it's like I said earlier, and then your mind goes and gets the pre-installed reaction off the subconscious hard drive.
Yeah.
So I would say to you, okay, let's figure out when you hit a chip shot, how do you want to react, regardless of whether the shot goes in or not, or if it's a poor shot, how do you want to react? Because then you have a target. If you don't do that, then you don't have a target. And that's why you flounder, because, you hit the shot and then the shot gets, it's a bad shot or something. And then there's this moment of confused mental activity that is going on. And that gives your mind the opportunity to go get your reaction that you've expressed
I've
so
had
many
in
times.
there forever, right? Yeah, that's right.
Right. So if you have a target, then you have an awareness of, this is what I want to. That's your trigger. When you hit the shot, that's your trigger. As soon as the ball lands and goes wherever it goes, then you have that you execute the target. You aim at the target, whatever that is, whatever your reaction is going to be. Like, it went left, it went right. Whatever it's going to be, this dead, non-judgment, analytical thing where you just want to analyze what the ball did, take in the data, and decide, okay, on the next shot, I notice that I have a tendency to hit the ball too softly. I consistently come up short, because you can't, when you're reacting to this stuff emotionally, you're not taking in all the information that's in front of you because you're emotional. You can't be objective when you're emotional. So you want to be objective and watch the ball and watch what it does, and notice if you have a consistent error. And all the error is it's just data. Like when we attach a word to it, like it's a mistake, it's an error, then what happens is that we have this feeling of, oh, that's bad, I shouldn't have done that. It's just information that's feeding back to you. So if you can watch the shot and your target is, I'm going to hit my chip shot and then I'm going to watch it, and that's my target. And then I'm going to judge it, like I said, in the DOC, do, observe, correct, from the practicing mind. And then I'm going to execute DOC, and then I'm going to move on to the next shot. If you do that, then you have the opportunity. That situation becomes an opportunity for you to complete a repetition of doing this, because it's going to take you so many repetitions in order to reinstall. This is going to be your new reaction, and you're going to have to execute that so many times in order for that to be the natural way that you react after you hit the shot. And so you can't execute that unless you're in the situation. So every situation. So when you hit a shot and it's not a good shot, or it doesn't give you the result that you wanted. You produced a result, but it's not the result you wanted. That's your opportunity to execute this new target. This is what I want to do when this situation happens. And what you'll find is that it's like, when you when you're flying in an airplane, I told you this the last time, if the engine quits, you don't think about what should I do when that happens. You've already made those decisions on the ground and you've practiced them. You have a whole list. If the engine quits, is it an electrical? Is it a fuel system? It's whatever it is. You have a list in the airplane that's laminated that you go through, and you practice this over and over again, so that when that situation occurs in the air, you're not trying to decide what should I do. That's not where you want to be. You need to have the decision made before you get in the situation. That's when it becomes so much easier, because there's no decision making. You're just executing. So that's the reason why I would say to you, what I would do is I would sit in a chair and think of, how do I want to react? Do you even know? Make a hard choice. What I want to do in that situation is this. And then I'm going to have this rescue phrase, like, this is when the fun starts. Something like that. Like you hit a bad chip, you go, hey, this is when the fun starts. And then you execute your new system. And then that will eventually become the way that you handle the situation normally, because that will feel normal to you. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think part of that too is, the initial part of it is, and maybe it's, okay, I'm going to accept what happens because I'm going to learn from it right at the start, instead of when I'm walking up to the shot, oh gosh, what if this happens? That's the tape that's playing, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? So.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that, and as we talked the last time, you have to practice, some sort of a meditation practice, some sort of a thought awareness training, because if you, the problem for, most people is that they are not the observer of their thoughts. They're just in the emotional content of the thought that their mind creates. So a situation rises, the mind goes and gets the installed information off the hard drive, and then it produces the thought that goes with that. And then you experience the emotional content of that thought. This is the 5% thing that I was saying earlier. Yeah. You're really not making any conscious choices at all. You're just a puppet that's being manipulated by your own mind. And so you can't, you don't have the privilege of choice unless you become the observer. And the only way you can do that is to practice, a system of thought awareness.
Yeah. Well, let's switch a little bit, but I'm sure it has some relevance to what we talked about already. So I did, as I said earlier, read Fully Engaged, which it was great. It's a short little book, but it's got a lot of interesting things in it. And I was trying to think about the most interesting thing to me, but the last chapter is you have to be there. And on page 99, you talk about saying, in a way, it's ironic. And talk about that little part of the book, which I think is, sort of the carrot out there for people who can become fully engaged. Isn't that really what it is?
Yes. Yes. I think it's, as I said, in fact, I think I actually have that right here, to tell you the truth.
I have it too. So.
Okay. Well, I was going to say that, all of this that we're talking about is a skill. I mean, everything in life is a skill. Whether it's buttoning your shirt, feeding yourself, walking across the room. Everything starts from a place of no skill, and then it moves on this line where you're moving towards mastery. And in many cases, mastery, the real authentic mastery, is understanding that there is no point of mastery. I mean, it's kind of ironic because there's never a point where you're as good as you're going to be. That whether it's golf is and life is an art. Whether you're going to be able to conduct yourself the way that you would like to conduct yourself in every situation, there's always going to be a way that you can feel that you can improve yourself. And as I said in that last section there, is when you start out, you don't really have much of a perspective on what good is. So if I can just digress for a second, I may have told this story on the last interview, but I once had a woman who came to me for coaching, and she had left a corporate job and wanted to be a visual artist. And so when we started off the first session, she said, I asked her what the problem was, what she was struggling with. And she said, well, I want to be a visual artist. I want to have a business in that. And I've been studying visual art work for 6 months, and I'm not as good as I should be. And I thought it was a fair question. So I said to her, how good should you be? Because I didn't know. And there was this dead silence on the phone. And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, if you don't know how good you should be, you're getting that information from somewhere. And if you don't know what that is, how do you know that you're not actually better than you should be for someone who's been at this for 6 months? And she said, I guess I don't know that either. And I said, well, if you could do what you can do now, 6 months ago, would you feel that you were good? And she said, yeah, if I could have done it 6 months ago, I would have looked at what I'm able to do now as being very good. And I said, so what's really happening is your perception of what good is changing as you grow in the art. And she said, yes. I said, well, that's really a blessing? I mean, because would you really want to get to a place where you said, you know what, that's it, I'm as good as I can be? I mean, it's like exercising, I mean, expansion is a part of life, and we don't ever get to a place where we don't have to exercise anymore. Like, I've got it, I've mastered exercising. I mean, so to me, this is the same thing, I think it's interesting when we start out, we have probably the most inaccurate perception of what we're capable of. And we're the hardest on ourselves. We're operating from the lowest skill level. We have the highest expectations. But as our growth expands in the skill, that starts to change. What happens is we become more aware of how infinite the ability is for us to advance in the skill, which there's a moment there where there's kind of to me, it's an epiphany where you realize that that's really a blessing, is that this is what true perfection is. True perfection is the ability to infinitely expand, to infinitely improve. And when you embrace that, what ends up happening is that you let go of this feeling, I have to get to this place. When I'm incomplete, and when I get to this place, then I'm going to be happy. And when you let go of that, all of a sudden, you become present moment oriented, because you learn and you accept that the joy is in the process of becoming, and the process of developing mastery, if you want to call that. And that's really what mastery is. Mastery is understanding that there is no place you're going to get to where you're as good as you can be, and that the joy is in the process of learning and the process of improving. And that's when that happens. And it does happen. It's a very conscious experience. All the stress drops away, because you don't feel like you have to be anywhere other than where you're at. You don't feel like you have to be better than where you are. And it's actually comforting to know that, you know what? There is no point in time where I'm going to be as good as I can get. And you can see this in golf. You can see this very easily. You look at the best players in the world that have the best equipment, custom-made equipment. They have the best coaches, best swing coaches in the world, the best sports psychologists in the world. And they can't play in the 60s all the time. And what happens is when they don't, you see with a lot of them, they get upset with themselves, because like they are still, no matter matter how much time and money they pour into it, they still have room for improvement. It's not like they're all shooting 59s every time.
Yeah.
So, and that's the nature of golf, which is really just a microcosm of life. It is and that is the beauty of it. If everybody out there could get to where they could shoot a 60 every time they played, we wouldn't watch it and they wouldn't play it. It's because there's always this room for improvement and growth, and that's what happens as you become better. You begin to realize that that's what you love about it, is the fact that you can get better, and you stop being so impatient with this, because impatience comes from this feeling of I'm not where I need to be, and when I get there, this feeling I have inside will go away. But it doesn't go away, and that's the reason I'm talking about. We think if I could play like Rory McIlroy, if I could play like Jordan Spieth or Tiger Woods or whoever it is, I would be happy. But they're not. They're used to playing at that level. So for them, they want to play better. They're still in that place. They might score lower than you, but they're still internally, they experience a bad round like you experience a bad round. They want to play better. That's why they practice, and that's why and of course they're making a living at it. So it's a little bit different in that they have to perform at a certain level to make a living at it and to stay on tour, but the actual experience of playing is very much the same as what we as amateurs experience.
Yeah. Well, you did not tell that story the last time, but what's so neat about you telling it is one of the parts of the book of Fully Engaged that I liked was, and maybe we'll end if there's anything more. Maybe this is some of your aha stuff, but there was a section called Setting Goals Using Accurate Data where you talked about the process of you actually publishing your book. And how you were not, setting your appropriate goals correctly using accurate data, right? That was a great chapter in the book.
Well, that chapter detailed, the process of having going from having a very successful 6-figure business that I had worked for many years to build. I had $100,000 in tooling that I owned. Had 2 business properties. I was working in 4 states, and I really was as successful as you could be, much more successful than many other people that were in the trade. And I decided that I wanted to write and publish The Practicing Mind. And initially I tried to get that done through a publisher, and nobody would talk to me because I was an unknown. And so then I decided I had to self-publish it. And I actually wrote the book back in the mid-90s. I didn't publish it until about 2005. And that was because I was so busy with this business that I just couldn't do it. And so I made the decision eventually that I was just going to have to sell this business, walk away from it, and just focus, take the money that I got from the sale of everything to support my family and myself, and and publish this book and put it out there. And I really wanted a different model, because the model that I had worked under was a work for $1, make $1. And what I mean by that is it was a service business. And when I first got in business, I thought, well, the problem here is that I just don't have enough clients. If I had enough clients, I would be busy all the time and making all this money. Well, what I didn't realize was, I figured out, okay, let's just say you need 2,000 clients in order to stay busy all year to operate at maximum capacity. It never occurred to me, well, what do you do when you have 3,000 clients? And so I was fortunate enough that I started the business when I was in college. And, by the time I was 25, 26, I had more clients than I could serve in a year. So then I was in a situation where I was working 7 days a week. I was working 60 to 70 hours a week. I had no time off. I had basically, it got to where I couldn't play golf because I didn't have the time. I had a pilot's license. I couldn't fly. All this stuff was the result of this, quote, successful business that I had. And I couldn't get to the money. In other words, once I passed 2,000 people, it didn't matter if I had 10,000 people. I couldn't make more money. And because it was an artisan trade, people said, well, why don't you just hire other people? And I said, well, that won't work in this, because the people that have my skill level don't need to work for me because they've got their own business. And the people that don't have my skill level, I can't hire them because my customers are expecting a certain skill level. So anyway, I had this idea. I thought, if I wrote a book and I sell 100 this month and 10,000 next month, I don't have to write every book. I just have more printed. So I thought that's a better model. Plus I can do downloadable products, and it all seemed like a great business idea. And in my head, I thought, well, let me think. The internet gives you access to the entire world. So if you produce like an audio version of the book and the print version, and you come up with a website, geez, if you sell to 1%, you're like, you're a multimillionaire. Well, it just didn't go that way. I did all that stuff. I had the website, I had the audio version, I did all that stuff, but nobody knew who I was. And so you're right. It took a lot longer. I did not have accurate data. I was inexperienced. It never occurred to me that I didn't have accurate data. I thought I had figured everything out. And my point in that is that if you don't have accurate data, it really impacts your sense of self-worth, your self-confidence. It can make, and the example that I use the analogy is, I want to lose 30 pounds. That should take 5 days. And we can all look at that and say that's absurd, but that's only because we know the data. The data is, we have the accurate data. So, but if you didn't, that's what we do. And that's what I did. That's what we do in so many situations. And if you don't have accurate data, then what happens in that situation? Well, you go on an exercise program and a healthy diet, and in 3 days you've lost 4 pounds, and you're like, I got one more day to lose 26 pounds, and you're like, I am not good at this. I can't fulfill my goals. Your whole self-talk internally becomes self-sabotaging and everything, when in reality, you're actually doing very well. It's just that you have set a goal with unrealistic information and incomplete data. So that's why it's really important to me is to do the research and to question. If you're trying to accomplish something and it's not happening, the first thing that we do is start to criticize ourselves, I wanted to break 90 this year, I'm playing once every 2 weeks, you're thinking like, I ought to be able to do that in a season. Well, suppose you're playing every 3 weeks, suppose you're not getting any instruction. You're just repeating the same swing errors every time, the same mental errors every time. I mean, if you don't put all the data down, and look at that, you might be actually scoring quite well for someone at your playing level and your mental understanding and the amount of time, the frequencies that you play.
And then, being accepting of that. And if you want to go further, fine. If you want to just go out and play because you want to play, if that's your life, do that. But, put all the pieces together so you can be where you'll be the best you can be. Right?
I remember when I was trying to break into the 70s for the first time, I was talking to my PGA pro, and I was playing once a week, and I was talking to him. I said, I'm frustrated. I feel like I should be, because I could hit a lot of good shots and I could work the ball, but there just always seemed to be something that happened. I had a scoring barrier, and I would always shoot around 80, 81, and I just couldn't break through to the into the 70s. And he said, for one, Tom, it's statistics. He said, you're only playing once a week. He said, you really shouldn't be shooting as well as you are.
Telling you the truth, right?
Yeah. He said, he said, just think about it. He said, you've got a scoring barrier. He said, if you played 5 times a week, he said, you would let go of breaking into the 70s. He said, because when you went out on Monday, you would say, if I don't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. And he said, and then that would drop, and then you would break through. And he goes, and then it wouldn't be this barrier anymore. And but see, that's a perfect example of how we process things incorrectly. And I think that's an important lesson for people that are playing golf. And it's also, for life. I mean, I want to lose so much weight. This should take this much time. I want to have a new job. It should take this much time. We always create these goals in our head.
Much time, right? Yeah.
Right. And then we immediately attach a time frame to it, whether we're even conscious of it. We have this time frame attached in our mind of how long it should take, and we have no information that backs that up.
It's going to take the time that it takes.
Right.
If we're gonna,
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you're enjoying the process of doing it, then the time it takes just means, if it takes longer, it just means you get to enjoy the process longer.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Tom, thanks for being back today. I'm going to put links to, Fully Engaged in the show notes and to your website and any other links that you provide. But it's always great to talk with you and let you talk with us about things we can do to just keep getting a little bit better all the time. It's fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I always enjoy spending time with you, Tony.
Game Improvement Golf. I create exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores.
Tom, thanks for what you shared with all of us today, and also for becoming a good friend. I've included links in the show notes where you can learn more about Tom and also where you can purchase his second book, Fully Engaged. This book is a short read, but it's full of actionable information to help your golf game and your life. My shout out today is to one of my true custom club fitting inspirations, Bert Reich with Gooder Custom Clubs in Saskatchewan, Canada. He is simply a great custom club fitter. I put a link to his website in the show notes. Thanks, Bert. Well, that's it for today. Once upon a time, a 69-year-old golfer had some knee pain, and it went away because, well, in 2 weeks, I welcome back Joe Lacaze, founder of Rotex Motion. I interviewed Joe 3 years ago, and we'll talk some about the because and why I do Rotex Motion strengthening exercises every day now. See you in 2 weeks.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com